So welcome everybody. I'm Allison Williams, the program coordinator for the Copper Queen Library, and I'm so excited to have you here for this presentation. My announcements are brief before I turn it over to Brent. We are slowly transitioning the library back into in-person resources and activities. So one of the things that we have done is we have started library by appointment, so as to keep patron use low in the library, but you can just call us and schedule, or even stop by if there isn't somebody scheduled, and come in the library and browse. Your time is limited to 30 minutes, but you will have access to the computers and to the printer, as well as our collection. And the other thing is that starting this Friday, we are going to start an outdoor story time. Our traditional story time on Fridays at 10:30 in the morning will be at Grassy Park for the next 4 Fridays in May to see how it goes. So if you know any preschool children or even kindergarten or first grade who want to come and participate in story time, I can tell you, you're all adults here, but the people that I miss the most are the kids. I just am so excited to see them again, although it is wonderful to see all your faces today. But so our first in-person is Storytime in Grassy Park at 10:30 a.m. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Brent Crowther. Brent is from Kimley Horn and is in charge of this feasibility study. Welcome, Brent.
Great. Thank you very much. And I will go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Okay, y'all seeing that?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, thanks for allowing me the opportunity to be here this evening. Let me just adjust my screen here so that I, okay. Excited to be here this evening to share with you where we're at on the City of Bisbee Shared Use Feasibility Study. What we'll do here this evening first is introduce the team and then those particular members of our Technical Advisory Committee who are participating with us here this evening, give you a bit of an overview of the project, discuss the concepts that are being considered, and then take some time to answer some questions. So first from the team here, my name is Brent and I'm the Kimley Horn project manager. Rebecca Field, you want to wave to us, Rebecca? Landscape architect. And then we have Kristen is taking some notes for us. Kristen Fultz, if you wave there, Kristen. That wasn't a very good wave, Kristen. And then I also have Olivia, who joined us yesterday as an intern, who's getting her first experience with y'all here today. So I do want to take some time to introduce some of the Technical Advisory Committee representatives. First, I see Bill Harmon. Bill, you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hey, Brent, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hello, everyone. It's great to be with you this evening. I appreciate your time. I'm sure that you've had a long, busy day, but this is an important undertaking for the community, and just want to give accolades to all those who have kept the faith and have a vision, and appreciate your contributions.
Thank you, Bill. Donna?
Hi, everybody. I am Donna Lewandowski. I am the Bicycle and Pedestrian Program Coordinator for ADOT. So.
And then I can't see everybody. I see Megan there with us.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan, Project Manager of Bisbee Bikeways, and thank you all for being here. I look forward to hearing what you think, and if you have any questions, I hope you will ask them. Thank you.
Great. And then Mayor Budge, if you want to take a minute. You're on mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
I'm here to listen and learn and hear everybody's opinion. And I'm just glad that we have, looks like 41 people on board from what my screen shows. So thank you everybody for joining us, and let's let Brent show us the concept. So thank you all.
Great. And any other representatives from our TAC that I haven't, that are here that I missed?
Hey, Brent, this is Bill Harmon. I think we need to have our new city manager introduce himself.
Oh, excellent.
Mr. Pauken.
Okay, you got me, Brent?
Yes, go
Okay.
ahead.
Hi, Steve Pauken, city manager for the third time in Bisbee, and a couple other places over the years. I just began looking at this project a couple of weeks ago upon my return to City Hall, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the folks that are here have to say. That's the purpose of having a public meeting, and hopefully we can continue from there and come up with a plan that can be useful and beneficial.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. So let's jump right into it. If you're seeing my screen there. So just as a project background, the city of Bisbee received a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture to conduct this feasibility study. And the grant application described the study as along SR80 between the historic downtown and the Lowell district. Some of the reasons why, really the purpose is to provide a comfortable and safe facility to walk and bicycle. You've seen the facilities are out there. It's a narrow strip of concrete. I don't think we can even quite call it a sidewalk, adjacent to SR80 with 4 traffic lanes. And it really is not a great facility for people to walk and bicycle along who not only visitors, but the residents traveling between the Lowell district and downtown. The other important part is the USDA in particular is interested in promoting economic development. And that's an important part of this pathway, is to make it a jewel, that the city can be proud of, and if supporting industries, whether it attracts additional people to come and bicycle and spend money, staying at the hotels or restaurants as they enjoy the great cycling climate that is Southern Arizona. Just an overview of where the study area we are looking at here between historic Bisbee at the west end, and then along SR80 here at the east end near the Lowell district, and this is Erie Street. You can see here for orientation, this is a lavender pit overlook, and here at the west end, we have the Queen Mine tour parking. This project has been looked at a number of times over the years, including in the most recent Bisbee Area Mobility Master Plan that identifies a network of shared use paths. This is one element of that overall master plan. Represents one of the core pieces of that master plan, really providing that connection between different areas of Bisbee, the historic district and the residential areas to the east. The pathway can also become part of what is called the Sun Corridor Trail. When ultimately constructed, it will extend all the way from Douglas to Las Vegas mostly on a separated on its own separated facility, and become a part of the regional and statewide network. Back in January of this year, we had a public meeting that some of you may have been on, where we initially talked about what's important, what are some of the initial concepts that we should move forward with. We had a public survey. 72% said they were very unsatisfied with current conditions on SR80 for walking or for bicycling. 64 very unsatisfied with conditions for walking, and 86% said they would ride or walk this particular segment if they felt safe and protected from the adjacent traffic on SR80. So taking that feedback, we have gone through and fleshed out a couple of concepts for consideration. The process that we followed was first looking at what the current conditions are. Second, talking about that with the community back in January. And now here we are preparing concepts and bringing that back to you for input. Based on the input we received this evening, we'll refine that concept and then publish our final report. That final report is due to be completed by the end of June. And it's important to note that after that final report is completed, the stakeholders, the city, the partners really need to identify funding. We don't have funding identified within this grant for design and construction. That is a subsequent part. The purpose of this study is to help us identify what is a concept and how much money do we need to find. Many refinements can happen during that design. We're not going to get to the level of detail of defining, every piece of this pathway. We're presenting the concept, ensuring that we have community support and that the community wants to move forward, and how much money do we need to identify to begin the design and the construction process. Allison, is there somebody in the waiting room still that we need to admit?
Let me check.
Okay, I think I see a message there. So some of the considerations when we're looking at our concepts, we want to, number one is provide a facility that's safe, both for pedestrians and bicycles and vehicles. We want a facility that provides connectivity. We need a good terminus where people can get on the pathway, both at the beginning point and the ending point. You can't just start the pathway out of the blue. You need people to be able to access the pathway. We want it to be comfortable. If people are comfortable on it, they will use it. And we call it the 8 to 80 rule. We want it to be comfortable for those who are age 8, as well as those who are age 80. The pathway really also provides some aesthetic and cultural opportunities. We can introduce public art done by local artists. Many of you may have seen in the concept, the concept for the separation is with portions of it is with a concrete barrier. We can put artwork on the back of that barrier on the pathway side, done by local artists to bring that local Bisbee flair. And then here we want the pathway to be able to promote tourism and economic development, something that the community can be proud of, something that can be advertised, something that tourists can say, I want to go to Bisbee and bring my bike and participate in the local community. When we're looking at specific types of facilities, we want to look at the traffic impacts. We want it to be safe for traffic as well. We don't want to introduce, make it a dangerous facility. Some of that is through better organization of traffic. It's through speed management. It's through signage. It's through pavement markings. But we want it to be safe both for the bicycle and for the traffic. In this particular case, we knew that right-of-way was a significant constraint. And in that regard, we've proposed a concept that largely uses the right-of-way that we already have, so we don't have to go through a process of procuring new right-of-way, which actually isn't available because we're on FMI land for the bulk of it anyway. We want the pathway to be affordable. We can't go in and propose a $30 million facility because we know there isn't $30 million sitting around to constructing like this. So we have identified solutions that we feel are achievable from a funding perspective. And it can be done reasonably within the next few years. We want it to be comfortable again, and we want it to be equitable. Reduce the barriers so that people of all ages, incomes, socioeconomic backgrounds are able to equally enjoy the benefits. As a review of what our current condition looks like, you can see here the photo here, 4 lanes, and these outside traffic lanes are very in width. generally 16 to 17 foot of the outside lane and 12 foot on the inside lane. And in this walk area, generally about 4 feet wide. We have proposed a couple of concepts. We call them Concept A and Concept B. Both of the concepts are identical between the east end, Erie Street, and what's labeled in Google Earth as Dart Road. I don't know if that's known locally, but that's the Queen Mine Tor entrance area. So both of the pathway concepts are essentially identical through that segment. And then we do have some options at the west end between the Queen Mine Tor entrance and how we connect to downtown. Throughout the pathway, there are segments where we have more space within the paved area. And so we're able to provide a horizontal barrier or horizontal median to provide the separation between the pathway and the vehicles. Other areas that width narrows down and we don't have room for that horizontal barrier, and so horizontal distance, and so we propose more of a vertical barrier, and that requires less space and less room. And so that's why you'll see the two different spacing concepts within the plan. Both of the concepts require converting traffic lanes to the shared use path. The concept that we have proposed is converting the 4 lanes to 3 lanes, 1 eastbound lane, 1 westbound lane, and a 2-way center left turn lane. And we'll describe a little bit more some of the advantages to this configuration. The concepts also include a paved outside shoulder. Right here, it's shown as buffered striped, more for illustrative purposes. This would function more as a paved shoulder, like you'll see a bike lane on many streets, but it provides an area for a breakdown lane for vehicles if they should break down. It also provides a space for bicycles that want to go faster, that don't want to be on the shared use path. They can use that paved shoulder. And here is some illustrations of what each of those sections might look like. You can see this top image here is with the concrete barrier, and we've shown an opportunity for some artwork here on the inside of the barrier, and we're maintaining the existing curb here that is adjacent to the lavender pit. The plan, for economic reasons, does not adjust this curb. We're trying to stay within the curb lines so that we're making something that can be economically done within our constraints. Some of the questions that they asked, how do we accommodate drainage? We haven't shown the details of drainage, but we would have drainage openings within the barrier so that water can continue to flow through into the adjacent gutter, both within the barrier as well as within the median. Our plan is to not impact the existing drainage and require new drainage infrastructure. Some of you may be wondering why the 3-lane configuration. That is something that provides some benefits, both from what we call a traffic calming perspective. When we take a roadway and we visually and physically narrow it, vehicles feel like they need to drive slower. And that's an important element of providing a facility that people are safe and comfortable in walking along. So providing that 3-lane conversion does help visually and physically narrow the roadway. We get people more inclined to drive closer to 35 miles an hour instead of 45 miles an hour. In addition, the 2-way center left turn lane provides some room with our paved shoulder on the outside. If there's a vehicle that breaks down, or if an emergency vehicle is coming behind, a vehicle can pull over, and the 2-way center left turn lane allows enough room for an emergency vehicle to go around the vehicle, so we don't have any impact to emergency services. The two-way center left turn lane also provides turning room for the vehicles that need to turn into the FMI driveways, room to do so. They're rare. Yeah, those driveways are generally closed, but does provide that opportunity into the FMI driveways and also into the Lavender Pit overlook area, where it is hoped that as we improve that area, that will become more of a tourist attraction as well. You may be wondering, where has this been done before? An example that you are likely all familiar with is up in Tombstone, where it is a 3-lane configuration, 1 lane in each direction with a 2-way center left turn lane. The traffic volumes through Tombstone are very similar to what we have here in Bisbee. In Tombstone, there are around 5,000 vehicles per day, very similar to the traffic volumes on this segment of SR 80. And what I'd like to do now here, I'll stop sharing for just a second. And I'd like to, yeah.
This Bill, may I interject a question?
Yes, please do.
That has been asked by other stakeholders. When we talk about lane repurposing, one of the questions that has come up is the possible detrimental effect to the movement of motorized vehicles. And the way we measure that in ADOT's world is we use a report card system called level of service. A's excellent service, it goes B, C, D, down to F. So with the proposed lane reconfiguration and the anticipation of what traffic is now and a modicum of growth that we can expect in the future, and the potential for rearranging a little bit of activity at the international border, that the feeling is, the assessment is that we would not see a significant decline in level of service, that drivers of motorized vehicles are not going to be hemmed into some untenable traffic jam to the benefit of bicyclists and pedestrians. That corridor can, the geographical space that can be rearranged to accommodate adequately and comfortably both the drivers of motorized vehicles, cars and trucks, as well as bicycles and pedestrians. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would, and actually, as we get into the presentation, I have a little video of what that's actually going to look like. We've done that analysis, and we are showing that it meets ADOT objectives for performance, which is level of service D in urbanized areas. And our traffic assessment shows that we will be achieving that performance objective.
Okay.
And Bill, thank you so much for your question. But from here forward, I'm just going to ask that everybody hold their questions until the end of this presentation, where we will have a Q&A, but also to use the chat. So sometimes you have a question during that moment that it's being presented. Just put your question in the chat as a placeholder. And then, of course, when we get to Q&A, you can unmute yourself and elaborate on it, just so that Brent can get through the presentation.
I will behave myself.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Allison, I'll just, Bill is part of our team.
Awesome. I thought so, but
yeah,
just so you can get everything through and then have a full Q&A.
Yep. So let me share the screen again here with you, and I'll just talk through the concept here. You seeing that? Okay. I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay, so you can see here, this is down in Erie Street, and you can see our 3-lane configuration here. We start Erie Street, vehicles can come up and make a left turn into Erie Street, both as they head up north into the pathway. or pardon me, west of the area. And you can see our pathway here we're proposing that will end here at Erie Street. And then once they get into Erie Street, there could be additional signage and such. It takes you through, where the building facades are, but I think that'll be a great connection to introduce tourists to that area through there. As we move to the west, you can see our pathway configuration goes from behind the back of the curb, and that's to be allowed a right turn lane here into Erie Street, but then we come up and we get back here into, so we're in between the existing curb lines on SR 80. And you can see this hatched area is that paved median that I had talked about earlier. And then the cross section narrows down a bit where we don't have room for the concrete median. And so we narrow down, so we have to transition more to the vertical barrier section that I had shown you earlier. And we continue that section for several hundred feet. The one lane in the eastbound direction, the two-way center left turn lane, and the one lane in the westbound direction. And actually, through this section, it's narrow enough that we actually don't have the two-way center left turn lane through this section because the roadway is narrower as we go through here. So there is a section where we just have the one lane in each direction. But then we get up to the Lavender Pit overlook area, and we do gain our width again. But what we are doing is bringing the pathway up out of the street and into the Lavender Pit here. And so you can see here the Lavender Pit area, we have the pathway, and then we have this two-way left turn lane section here with a one lane in each direction. And then what we're proposing is some, and you know what, Rebecca, I realized I'm not showing the illustrated version here with all your pretty artwork, but we'll find that. She's like freaking out. She said, Brent, I just did all that work. But we showed in the concept that's in the report, you'll see there are some landscape illustrations here to spruce up this Lavender Pit area. As we leave the Lavender Pit here, you'll see we have a right turn lane into the Lavender Pit. Then we continue on, and then we get back into behind the curbs, and we continue up that section. We have our left turn lane with a one lane in each direction again, as we continue on towards historic Bisbee. We maintain that section. You can see here where we do have some of the driveway openings to access FMI. We have a break in that median opening, and we would make sure those are well signed. That we've talked with FMI in terms of a procedure that they would use when they're making movements into that, turning on their flashing lights, if they need a guide vehicle to make sure that they can do that safely. We continue that cross section on as we continue up towards historic Bisbee until we get up into the copper mine entrance area. And this is where we have the two separate options. And we'll get into that describing option A, which is what you're seeing here, and option B, which I'll describe, but essentially moves a pathway out of the traffic lane here so we can largely leave traffic flow in its current configuration. So I do want to switch back to the PowerPoint again. How do I do that? Where is it? Why is it not? Okay, let me go there, slideshow. Okay, you seeing that again?
Yes.
Okay, so here I have concept A and concept B here side by side to give us a little bit more comparison of these options. So concept A, as you can see, we have a left turn lane that comes up from the north. We have a through lane in each direction, And then what we have is converting what's now one-way Naco into a two-lane street. So we have a traffic heading westbound exits off into Naco. And then in order to provide the pathway down here, what vehicles would normally be coming off a main street and heading onto SR80, we're proposing concept A that could be converted to the shared use path. Vehicles that would normally use that would then use Naco Drive up here, which is converted to two-way, to then make a left turn onto SR80. Vehicles that are wanting to head west on SR80 would continue to use the ramp as they always have. Vehicles exiting off SR80 to get into Old Town would continue to use the ramp as they always have. The only impact is vehicles headed out of town, exiting historic Bisbee to head east, would be shifted to Main Street to make a left turn. Concept B constructs a pathway completely outside of the existing roadway so that all of that stays the same. We don't modify Naco, we don't modify Main Street, it stays the same. The impacts on concept B will require a reconstruction of the bridge, the underpass here at SR80, in order to widen that for the bicyclists and the pedestrians. Here's a blow up of that concept A, and I have the blow up of concept B. And I just wanted to show here what that concept A looks like from a traffic perspective. This is where we shift traffic up onto Naco Road and it becomes two-way. What I will say is this simulation is what we're doing is running it at force speed. So you actually see some activity in the traffic. So every 4 seconds on the ground is 1 second in real time. What we've done is shifted the traffic that was normally using Main Street. We've shifted that traffic up here to Naco. And you can see what that traffic volumes look like. And you can see here, this 230 is the vehicles during a peak hour are the vehicles that would be making that movement, 230 vehicles during that peak hour. And we got that number because we had people, including Megan, who stood out there for us on a Wednesday evening and counted traffic during the evening commute. We recognize that in Bisbee, there are special events. You have the stair climb event and things like that. And that brings a lot more people to town. This does not represent those peak hour conditions. During those, it would likely you would need some special traffic control during those special events to be able to better control that traffic. Okay. And as Bill had alluded to, ADOT requires a performance objective of what we call level of service D. And this intersection operates at that performance requirement. And that means every once in a while, there's going to be a little bit of a queue. I think you see in the simulation, we're about 3 or 4 vehicles had to wait there at that stop control. And so it's not, you won't never be delayed. We can't promise that, but we can tell you based on the simulation that the delay will be tolerable. It will be minimal. Oh, I stopped sharing again. Why did I do that? Well, now I've lost the presentation again. It's hiding. Where did it go? This is really strange. I'm going to stop and then see if I can find it again. Here it goes. Okay, now I'm going to share again. Okay. Right. Wanted to talk a little bit more about concept B. As I mentioned, concept B, the objective is to minimize impact to the existing traffic patterns. We maintain two-way traffic on Main Street, but we construct the pathway outside of the existing traffic lane. Concept B would require a fairly significant size retaining wall as we carve out more of this slope here. And that would require a reconstruction of this bridge here to be able to widen that for the bicyclists and the pedestrians. So you may be wondering, what does that all cost? Concept A, we have done a fairly thorough cost estimate, but it is at the conceptual level, considering the improvements for the roadway, the barricade, the concrete work, and everything. We are estimating that in 2021 dollars, that is approximately $2.3 million. In 2024, by the time we could actually go to construction after getting funding, we're estimating that with inflation and such forth, it would be closer to $2.5 million. You may wonder, where does, what's costing all that money? And here we've identified some of the major cost components. In order to restripe the roadway, reconfigure that, we are assuming there is an asphalt treatment so we can have fresh pavement and fresh pavement markings. That's approximately $145,000. The other bulk of it is a concrete work, both the median and to make that decorative pavement, as well as the concrete barrier. And then you have other items, traffic control that will need to occur during construction at $80,000, mobilization for the contractor to get his equipment out there, doing some roadway excavating for the new pathway and paved areas. And so we add that all up together and we get that $2.3 million. Concept B is the one where we have to construct the retaining walls and reconstruct the bridge. And you can see that in today's dollars, we're estimating that at about $4.7 million. And in 2024, it's about $5.2 million. So you can see it's the difference between that 2.5 and that 5.2 is a retaining wall and the reconstruction of the underpass at SR80. Okay. As many of you are aware, we have had a survey for the past week or two open, looking for public comment. That survey will remain open for another 2 weeks, after which we'll compile the results. But I did want to tell you what we're seeing already within that survey. The first question asked, to what extent do you agree with the shared use path concepts that are presented? The good news is the bulk of us are strongly agree. 101 out of the 190 respondents are supportive of either option A or option B. Only 11 have responded, or pardon me, 11 disagree and 53 strongly disagree. So we recognize there are a variety of opinions, and many people are concerned about the impacts of traffic and such forth. Second question asks us if for a preference between option A and option B. You can see here, we have option A at 44 of the 190, option B at 78 of the 190, and then do nothing. They don't want the improvements here at 65 of the 190. So kind of a mixed bag there again in terms of the improvement. I'm not sure how I reconcile, I guess maybe if I do the math a little bit more, maybe that adds up to the 101. I get that the 53 strongly disagree with the 65, so I guess it's not a 1-for-1 and consistency in the responses, but I think we can safely discern that there is support, but there's concern for the improvements. So what I want to do now is open it up to some questions. We have an opportunity for myself, we have Rebecca, we have Bill, we have Donna available to answer any questions that we may be able to regarding the pathway concepts. So I think Allison will be our moderator, who will read the question from the chat, and then we will direct that question to the proper respondent.
Yes, I would like to start with the chats, and then we'll move to unmuting. So from Thomas, is it possible to use the underpass access without constructing a wider pedestrian walkway?
It is if we remove one of the traffic lanes, which is consistent with concept A. There is not room to provide an adequate shared use path while maintaining the current width underneath the bridge.
So then there's a question about Freeport-McMoRan, and Freeport-McMoRan is a stakeholder in this project. Did they offer up any land in areas that are feasible to expand for passing lanes uphill? And does the center median need to be continuous? Could it be turned into a passing lane near Naco Road to?
So Freeport is part of our technical advisory committee. We have been in contact with them. I've had several discussions with Robert, who is supportive of the concept. And Bill can provide clarification. I believe SR80 is on an easement already from Freeport. I think, expanding outside of their current roadway footprint, as you can see from the existing conditions, you have a pit on the one side, you have the mountain on the other side, just becomes an expensive proposition. And that is why we have proposed to reconfigure our existing pavement width into a pathway that provides the most economical and feasible alternative. And it's consistent with the traffic volumes. The 5,000 to 7,000 vehicles a day can be adequately accommodated within the one lane in each direction. We've shown the example up in Tombstone that has similar traffic volumes with a similar configuration. And if you look at the capacity or how many vehicles per day can be accommodated in one lane in each direction with a two-way center left turn lane, it's upwards 15 to 18,000 vehicles a day can be accommodated in a configuration such as that. We are around that 5,000 to 7,000 vehicles per day.
Thank you. Those are really good numbers to consider. Al or AL asks, is the current rating a D? And if not, what is it? And can you explain what those ratings are again for us?
Yeah, sure. So it's level of service is what the criteria is called. And in the traffic engineering world, it goes from a level of service A to a level of service F. Level of service A means that you can free flow, you can move any way you want. You never have to really worry about it being delayed at a stop sign. You don't have to wait for another car. You can change lanes frequently. And it basically there's zero encumbrance from any other vehicles. Level of service F is when you're stuck in traffic. It's congested. At a traffic signal, you may wait for a couple of cycles, and that's what typical rush hour in a dense urban environment would be. In the transportation world, we recognize that level of service D is what we design to during a peak hour. We can never always have level of service A. Otherwise, we'd have 8-lane roadways everywhere. If we wanted everybody to be able to always move freely and never be encumbered by any congestion, then we would just have these big wide roadways that would be used for a couple hours during the day, and then they would be underutilized for the rest of the day. So we target our improvements to perform a level of service D during rush hour. And level of service D, we have different delay criteria. In a stop control condition, such as what would be the intersection of Naco Road and SR 80, we say that level of service D is, I should have brought the scale, but I think it's around 30 to 35 seconds of vehicle delay that you would be stopped at a stop sign under a level of service D condition.
Thank you. That was such a great explanation. I understand that much better now. Jesus would like to know, Jesus Haro is here with us. He's our public
Oh,
works
great.
director.
Sorry, Jesus, I did not introduce you. I didn't recognize you were on the call.
And our chief of police, Albert Echave, is also here. So Jesus, and you're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to expand on your question, which starts with, does alternate A reduce that available parking on Naco Road, which currently has two sides?
I think I actually have asked this, and I know the answer. I just wanted to make sure that the public is aware of some of the questions that I did bring up previously to Brent. So
yeah, let me, I can go to that concept. Let me share my screen again.
And Brent, when you do talk about this, so there were a couple other comments about the fact that a active traffic highway lane is appropriated during large festival events as parking. And so, commenting that what about the parking when people park up the highway? Although, to be clear, that is not a parking lane, it is a traffic highway lane.
That is correct. It is done so unofficially and is not the planned parking area.
Yes.
So let me just share my screen, what that's going to look like. Naco Road here. What we've shown here is the ability to accommodate probably about 3 to 4 on-street parking stalls here, adjacent to the travel lanes here on Naco Road. So we do lose some parking, but we have been able to maintain 3 to 4 parking stalls there adjacent to those businesses within Concept A. And I think, as we get into the design, there could be other opportunities. We'd have to investigate who, the ownership and the use of this area, if that can be expanded a little bit, or if you can put some parallel parking on there. I think those would be design details that would be fleshed out during a final design process.
And Brent, while that area that you're describing right there, while it does have a kind of a curb, it's not a paved sidewalk, but it is a large gravel pedestrian area that also potentially, if it could become accessible, that is extra square footage, right?
Yeah. I think I don't want to speak out of turn. I think the chief of police or ADOT would be probably more prudent to discuss, the options for overflow parking in there. It's not my favorite because, we like to organize parking. We want to get it in a safe place where the pedestrians can easily access. It's not my favorite to put parking in there, but I'll let some others chime in on that if they think that would be an adequate overflow area.
And the next question is again from Andrea, but I think several people have this question that if Naco Road becomes two-way, crossing SR 80 to go east has that issue of the sight lines are short. And so you did talk about the traffic backing up, that, that might happen, a car too. But I think the concern is that sight line of the traffic coming from downhill.
Yes, I have done some preliminary site distance estimates, and in order, we base necessary site distance based on vehicle speed of the approaching vehicle, and then the distance that the vehicle needs to take out. I believe, if I'm recalling my calculations, we needed to be able to see somewhere up into this area, around the bridge area, in order to provide the appropriate site distance. And based on what I have looked at, that site distance appears to be available. That would require confirmation when we get some survey and we get some folks in the field to do that. But based on my preliminary assessment, it looks like we do have sufficient site distance.
Excellent. Does anybody want to have an additional question specifically on that sight line? Okay, so A and B, I'm not sure your name, is asking about providing golf cart access to the mine tour. But I guess my question is, golf carts follow car traffic patterns, not bicycle or pedestrian traffic patterns, correct?
I'm going to let Bill chime in on that if I can.
Yeah, so this bill, they need to obey the traffic laws. So let me back up a bit. So in terms of our tiered system of who has right of way, in the absence of a signal, all intersections are by state law have either marked or unmarked crosswalks and that kind of thing to provide pedestrians right away where vehicles have to stop. A rider on a bicycle or a rider on a golf cart legally has to follow the laws of the land in terms of stopping at stop signs, obeying the speed limit, and those kind of things. So a golf cart would need to be on the portion of the roadway sharing that with other motorized vehicles.
Thank you.
So I don't think we would envision golf carts using the shared use path.
Yeah.
That would not be the intent.
So Al also asks, is there a cost savings for concept B if the path started at the mine tour driveway as opposed to starting it initially at Main Street and going under the overpass?
And the answer is yes, you'd shave a couple $1,000,000. You know, you wouldn't require reconstruction of the bridge and the retaining wall if you just started it at the Queen Mine tour. I think the downside, earlier on in the presentation, we talked about connectivity. I think it's important that there is a strong connection to historic Bisbee. Otherwise, how do people get to it? You don't want to necessarily require people to drive and park in the Queen Mine tour to be able to walk. I think starting it there, well, from an engineering and you know yeah, you could start it there, but it just provides a disconnect that I think diminishes the utility of the pathway. You could consider it as a phase one if that's considering funding constraints, and then you know the decision could be made later on. How are you going to extend it? But I wouldn't want that to be the ultimate beginning point of the pathway, because it does not provide that strong connection to historic Bisbee.
Brent, this is Bill. May I add to that?
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things that we consider when we contemplate where to start and stop a pathway, as Brent mentioned, you know, what's logical or what does represent connectivity, is that we have a variety of users of that pathway. And some of them potentially are not capable of making good decisions, nor are they capable of negotiating difficult terrains or challenging constraints. So just as an example, if a child was coming up from getting ice cream at a shop off of Erie Street and coming back and could walk as far as the mine tour, but then was ending up needing to getting out into the street. That's what we want to avoid, or bicycles. Say that. And especially problematic are people that maybe might be mobility impaired, or have some other impairment, a visually impaired kind of situation, or have some mental cognizant impairment, and have a hard time making choices. So that we have that spectrum of population, and we can't solve a lot of those problems, but we want to minimize the potential impact to them.
Thank you, Bill. When Brent started this, he mentioned equity as one of the primary goals, and you've addressed that so well. And I think that really is important to acknowledge that this is not just a car driver, a bicycle rider, and a pedestrian, that it's a more complex issue about accessibility, and equity addresses accessibility for those people. I personally really appreciate that. And then Brent, so there are several questions. I'm trying to read through everything and put them together, but Megan mentions that the level of service rating at a D for target peak hours is for, I think, plan for concept A. So what is the level of service for concept B? And then also there is another question about that. Where is it? But so is there, what is the level of service rating currently for our traffic patterns?
Yeah. So I'll answer the first part. Concept B makes no changes to the existing, and so there is no change in level of service for concept B. I need to go back. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I would say that during peak hour in Bisbee, we're probably operating at around a B, a level of service B. It could be better than that, but I'd have to go back and check those numbers.
Thank you. Jesus also is mentioning, are there any concepts around mitigating cycling speeds going down the slope around the pit?
Yeah, good question. I think that is probably one of the more challenging. We talked about needing to make it so bicyclists aren't going 60 miles an hour down that pathway. We've talked about using maybe a bit of a rougher surface, but that introduces its own challenges. If you do a chip seal, it gets loose, gravel and things like that, which we want to avoid. If you do a really smooth surface, you get bicyclists going really fast. So there's some things that they've done in Tucson. They call them kind of bicycle rumble strips. They're just a gentle millimeter, vertical strip across a pathway. It just gives a little gentle bump and reminds the bicyclists that they do need to slow down. So we could put something like that every few hundred feet to remind bicyclists to slow down. That's one of the things that I have thought of. I'm looking for other ideas if anybody has any of their ideas that we haven't thought about on that as well.
Brent, this is Bill. Is there a default space for the entire length of this project, where bicyclists who want to go fast.
Yeah, that's why we provided the paved, the outside shoulder. We have a 5-foot shoulder throughout the length of the
Okay.
project.
Right,
So
right,
that
right.
the bicyclists who do want to go fast, please get out there on the roadway and do your thing.
So we could maybe provide some additional signing or appropriate signing
Speed limits are, yeah.
to help segregate fast traffic from slow traffic, bicyclists.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So if I have missed your question in the comments, or if you have a question different from what has been answered, please feel free to unmute yourself and identify yourself and ask your question.
Andrew has his hand up.
Andrew? Andrew, I think you need to unmute yourself. Okay, if there's anybody else, and then we'll come back to Andrew.
I'm Robert, and one question that occurred to me in talking about setting up surfaces, one concern that I had earlier had to do with bicycle speed and bozos, since we have our fair share of bozos. But keeping the pathway clean, that issue that's always there for road shoulders and bicyclists is debris in the roadway. So I wondered if that was something you'd given consideration to.
Yeah, and maybe Jesus can speak to that. The pathway will be 12 feet wide. And so that is sufficient for a standard size street sweeper to be able to enter the pathway. And so I think we'd want to provide entry points for that, and they would be able to do that. And probably make, a regular arrangement or agreement for that to occur, quarterly or whatever the required frequency, but it would be able to be accommodated by a standard size street sweeper and would not require special equipment.
Yeah, it's my understanding that if this gets to being constructed, that it would be the city's responsibility for maintenance of that. So it would be something that we would put on a preventative maintenance schedule.
And that brings me to a question regarding maintenance, because I know that people have concerns about cost of maintenance. Do you have any information that you could offer as far as the cost that it would require to maintain a path like this for the city of Bisbee?
I don't have anything right now. It's something that we can look into. I can create a mock preventative manual, and our work order system will give me the cost of that. So I don't have anything right now.
Okay, thank you.
This is Bill ADOT. Just kind of bouncing off of that topic. That's one of the reasons that we would like to choose maintenance-friendly construction. So even though things like plants and flowers and things like that look nice, they become maintenance intensive. Irrigation systems become maintenance intensive, whereas harder surfaces, although they might not be as attractive, they are easier to maintain. So that gets into trade-offs.
Hopefully a happy medium can be found with that, because public space, part of creating public space for the public to use is about creating those benches or those plants or the beautiful things that also create community interactivity and community buy-in, really. So Andrew Laws, you're back with us. If you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. So yeah, the cars that you can park along the highway, I know that's not official parking, but it indicates that there's a lot of room there. I haven't gone out there and measured anything, but there seems like lots of room. And why can't the whole path be on that side of the highway? You have an existing sidewalk that's big enough. There could be room in the road for bicycles and keep them separate, and not do anything to Old Bisbee interchange, except, it'd be ideal to actually make some more parking. And then when it gets down to where that sidewalk ends, there's, various things that could be done there. You're just talking about spending $4 million here, potentially. You could build a bridge over the highway for the bicycles and the people to cross over, and then continue down on that side of the, on the side you planned it for, to Lowell. So I'm wondering, what, I strenuously object to closing the whole highway to make it only 2 lanes. I really think that will impact the quality of life of the vast majority of people in Old Bisbee who will never use that path. And they only want to drive to get from Bisbee to get their groceries and to get their medicine and things. They're not, it's a feel-good thing that is important. It's important for the bicycle people. We need it. There's definitely a way to do it without making it worse for the people that that don't ever intend to use it. So thanks.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew. Can I ask a question now, Allison? Or
Yes, absolutely.
so first of all, Brent and everyone, thank you so much. Brent, this has just been amazing what you've put together. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And of course, Megan and Bill and everyone on this project, thank you so much. So just a couple real small things, and then maybe a question or two. You had referenced that the current path is about 4 feet wide. I think that's above the pit. It's closer to about 20 inches below the pit, because I do walk it frequently. And so I think that's a somewhat important detail to mention. I think one of the things that I've noticed since kind of understanding that this might be a possibility is I've been watching the pedestrian traffic in other parts of town, other parts of Bisbee, and I see pedestrian traffic throughout other parts of Bisbee, between the Circle and Safeway and all over. But it seems to me like that there's a safety concern that prevents pedestrian use between Old Bisbee and the other parts. With that in mind, I think that the quality of life for a large portion of the population of Bisbee that are youth or marginalized people, when we talk about the equity issues, is the greater concern than the privileged group of people that may not want this for whatever their reasons might be. The speed and those things don't bother me. It's only a difference of 20 to 30 seconds when you consider the 3/4 of a mile that's 45. Because the speed does change right at the observatory outlook to 30. So it's really only about 3/4 of a mile where the speed gets affected. I appreciate the lens from you, Brent and Bill, about the numbers. We're way under half of the capacity. So I don't think that the flow is an issue. And while I appreciate some of the concerns from Andrew and some of the other things that a lot of the other people have voiced on maybe the less professional forums, is somewhat less valid to me. But I'm curious, you've been looking at this, Brent, for a couple months. Aside from Megan, you probably know the most about this. And I'm curious what you think from your research and from your review of the surveys. What do you think is the most legitimate concern or challenge with this project?
People don't like change. I recognize that the concept A is different. It represents a different traffic pattern than people have had for decades. since the 1950s or whenever, this was constructed, when the mine was active, and this configuration was built to accommodate a much higher level of traffic than what we currently have today. So I think it's change and demonstrating that change can be effective. I recognize the concerns that change is different. It's not what they're used to. I do feel like it will work. The traffic volumes, as you can see, are, that 5,000 to 7,000. It's the same traffic volumes you have up in Tombstone. You have 2 lanes to the east of Bisbee. You have 2 lanes to the west of Bisbee. There's not a lot more traffic, needs between Erie or between Lowell and downtown than you have in other parts of town where we still only have 1 lane in each direction. So I honestly feel like the traffic patterns will work. I recognize it's a concern. Change is always hard, but I think it really is just a change.
So from what I'm understanding from your extensive research on this, that the most challenging aspect is nothing physical, it's more mental.
I think it's more mental and it's more educational and getting people accustomed to it. I recognize, we do need to slow vehicles down coming down SR80, whether that's through speed warning signs, through, other mechanisms. We want vehicles to as they're approaching Bisbee, to have a visual cue of saying, oh, I'm entering a different context. It's no longer 55 miles an hour. I need to slow down. And I think, it could be monumentation, it could be signage, but we need to physically tell people you are entering a different environment. Please slow down for all of us.
Yeah, they need to slow down currently, but thank you. I'm going to stop talking now. I appreciate all the work that everybody is doing, and I really appreciate this idea. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Eric. And, that raises another point, which is that the issue with the semis and the Jake brakes coming downhill and entering the space of the city is an issue that has been brought up over and over again over the last few years, and is separate from this plan in that it still is an issue whether nothing happens with this plan or if something happens with this plan. And so, in fact, this plan could help address that issue of the speeding Jake brakes, getting people who are on these routes, weekly or daily or monthly, to understand the change and use their brakes accordingly. I do have one question, but I also wanted to say again, thank you, Eric, for bringing up equity, because I wanted to speak as a mom where I know several teenagers who knowingly and willingly take the risk to walk around the pit. Some of their friends are not allowed to walk around the pit by their parents, and others are simply too afraid to walk around the pit. So amongst the teenagers, those who choose to make that journey are considered brave or reckless, depending on who it is. And I think that that's something that should be taken into consideration. Our teenagers should be able to go on long walks especially if they don't drive yet, in order to reach Old Bisbee from other neighborhoods. And to be told that you're either reckless and crazy or brave in order to make this journey on foot, I think is something that does need to be acknowledged. My question is about the survey process. I wonder if the survey was adapted or updated to explain these price tags between concept A and concept B, adding on that 2.5 million to 3 million additional dollars to implement concept B, if the response would actually be different, because very few people want to see a feasibility study actuated the way that you have and Bisbee Bikeways and all the partners, and then see it put on the shelf. The goal is to find a way to find the funding to implement this plan, if the plan is in fact approved by the majority, will showing the price tags actually help with a response?
That's a question for me, Allison, is that right?
It kind of is, yes, just as a
Yeah.
survey instrument.
Yeah, we didn't include the details within the survey question itself. We provided the link. I guess you're saying because we provided the pictures, but not everybody had a chance to look at the final report, is what you're saying. So yeah, that's a good question. Price always influences. That cost is documented in the report that's available for people to take a look at. So I hope that folks will spend some time reading that and express their opinion accordingly. But certainly could have an influence if they were more aware of that cost.
This is Swan Eagle Fitzgerald, and can I say something right now?
Absolutely.
I've been living here just over a year, and I'm a senior who goes on very long walks, but I have not felt comfortable walking either towards Naco or towards Old Bisbee. And this has really inspired me, especially given the climate crisis we are facing. And people need to make changes, whether they want to or not. I mean, we're in a very serious drought. And this is so good for so many people. And to have access to getting around without a car in the way I customarily get around is life-changing. And to be part of solution is what we all need to be working towards as far as community goes, and to be implementing things that meet the needs of a spectrum of people. It's life and death, in my opinion. And I think this is brilliant. And I believe it'll inspire more than annoy.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. And Brent, also, I wonder if you could address some of these, I don't really think of them as cosmetic, but the pedestrian lighting, the art, the landscaping, the, possible rest areas, these more publicly inviting atmospheric things. But I think the pedestrian lighting is super important because there's already a current concern that there is no lighting around the pit.
Yeah, and actually we've identified that within the text of the document that we would recommend pedestrian scale lighting. It would be low level. It would be dark skies compliant, but I think that is an important part to have sufficient pedestrian lighting so that folks are comfortable using that in the evening hours.
Thank you. And Andrew would also like to, he feels his question was not answered. I think this is about Freeport and the opposite side of this plan, using that land on that side.
So is a question moving the pathway to the, I guess, the north side of the roadway? Is that the question?
Is that what
Okay,
you're
so there's already a sidewalk on the north side. We already is established that there's enough room for cars to park safely there. Therefore, there must be enough room for bicycles to drive in the roadway there. If you put your barriers, or if they need barriers, I don't know. But that would also keep the pedestrians and the bicycles separated. It would eliminate any need to alter the old Bisbee interchange. It would only mean, where would the people go when the sidewalk ends?
Yeah.
That would be the issue.
Yeah, and I think some of the other considerations is connectivity to the Lavender Pit overlook. We thought that's a great resource. We want folks to be able to have access to, and it's a great amenity as part of this. And you'd be requiring people to cross the street as well as at Erie Street, and so that would I guess by doing it on the north side of the highway, you'd require at least 2 additional crossings of the highway, which we were trying to avoid. And you know, I
Well,
guess
I don't know about 2. There's definitely 1, but why
well,
couldn't
there's
it,
at Erie Street and there's a Lavender Pit. Those at least 2, and then any others that you would need, you know, the Queen Mine Tour, et cetera. So I could see at least 2 without, you know, without much difficulty identifying those needs.
why couldn't the path go the whole way on the north side? And
Well,
then,
and I'm saying that if folks wanted to get to Lavender Pit, you'd have to have them cross the street.
but you're talking about spending $2 million to rebuild a bridge just to get people under the highway. So there's got to be other ways. And I'm saying there's enough room to maintain 4 lanes of traffic from the viewpoint up to Old Bisbee, just by utilizing the existing sidewalk and putting the bicycles in the roadway. And then you could reduce the lanes from the viewpoint to Lowell. I think that would be a reasonable compromise that people wouldn't, you know, think was, you know, a problem. You know, it seems to me that the main focus of this whole thing is to let people stare at the pit. You know, that the pit is some kind of huge attraction, that you want everything on the pit side. And sure, yeah, people like to go look at the pit, but that's not, you know, the real issue here is getting this done in a reasonable way that doesn't impact badly on, you know, people move to small towns because they don't want congested roads. You know, that we've already congested the road from the traffic circle out to Safeway. And there is frustration about that. That, you know, I drive on that pretty regularly. I think I've seen a bicycle once. So, you know, and people tend to drive very slow sometimes and enjoy the fact that you have to drive behind them slowly also. You know,
Andrew, if I could just take a minute, the city council meeting is starting in 5 minutes. And if there are any, if the mayor or council member or city manager would like to make a comment before you leave, I think they're all leaving. So thank you, Mayor.
Allison, can I make a very, very brief comment?
Yes, who is this?
David. David Budd. I just want to say I sometimes have to go several times a day between Old Biz and Warren, and I sympathize with folks who think that's going to maybe slow that down a little bit sometimes. But overall, I think it's a small price to pay for something that stands the potential of being as attractive and as 21st century and as transformative in the way that Bisbee that would be very attractive to most people. So I think paying that small price is something I'm willing to do. That's my 2 cents worth.
But other people aren't, and it's a price that does not need
Andrew,
to be paid.
sorry, Andrew, sorry, but I just need to get a few more people in. And so we're not going to argue these points here. We're just having our voices heard.
Oh, I'm
And
making my voice heard.
you have been heard. If you could just give me 1 minute. I'm not sure if the mayor is still here, but Mayor Budge, if you did want to comment. I think he had to leave. I was trying to give time for everybody before we end this program at 7 p.m. I do want to read from Serena, and this is going back to equity again. A walking, biking path is essentially for safe, non-motorized transportation around the pit. When considering the 2 options being offered, it is important to not impede the current safety levels of motorized traffic flow in any ways. For that reason, I vote for option B. Let's make the path safe for bikes and foot traffic and keep the highway safe for motor vehicles. If it needs to happen in phases, so be it. This is very worthy of our time, consideration, money, and energy. Thanks to everyone who's gotten it this far, and not everyone drives a car. And so again, I think that is very important to really acknowledge the people who do not have an automobile, which is a segment of our population. And so that might mean that somebody wants to walk to the Lavender Pit and look at it, or walk to Lowell, or walk to the mine tour from another neighborhood. And let me see if I have Another comment is, why not make 2 westbound lanes, 1 eastbound, and the bike lane on the south shoulder? And again, we don't have a representative from Freeport-McMoRan here, but just to remind everybody, they are a stakeholder, they are involved in the engineering, and their land, property, that hillside, that boulders fall down, there are a lot more issues than just choice, than just I want it here, not there. So Freeport is involved in this process, and I think while I am not speaking for them at all, I just think that there are other issues that are not necessarily part of this discussion at the moment. And please, everybody, go fill out that survey again now that you have heard more in depth about this plan. Even if you've already taken it, go take it again and see if you would answer the questions differently or if you have different comments, because these survey instruments are really important to the feasibility study. I guess I have time for one last question, and then Brent, I'll turn it over to you. Is there one more question?
Well, I want to actually say thank you to everyone who's here. This is Megan Connolly, project manager of Bisbee Bikeways. I've been working on this project for the last 2 years, and I started this because I wanted to create a safe way for children to get around. It's especially inspired by my daughter. And I am very concerned about the climate crisis that we're in. And I do think that we are going to have to make changes. And I really appreciate everyone's perspective. I'm glad that we have the facts, which are that the traffic flows are not going to be constricted by this. There is grant funding out there. Thankfully, I am willing to volunteer my time to write these grants so that we can have this pathway, as well as other Bisbee Bikeways board members. This has taken 2 years of volunteer time to get it to this point. And I appreciate the concerns, and I understand change is hard, but I do feel that this will be a huge asset to the community. And I appreciate everyone who joined. I hope you will fill out the survey and tell others to fill out the survey. It's available till the 20th, he said. I'm happy and open to talk to anyone at any point if they want to talk more about this project. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, thank you so much for your vision and all of your hard work on moving this, from an idea to moving this to, the feasible part in a feasibility study. I love that word, feasible. Brent, do you have any last thoughts?
No, thank you for your time. Just to clarify, we'd like to close the survey by May 18th, 2 weeks from today. So if you do have any other comments, I'm not sure that I'd want you to vote often, but just give us your comments. If you'd like to change your vote and you told us you voted one way or the other, in order to get a good assessment, why don't you send me an email and saying I voted one way, I'd like to change my vote. And that would help us. We want it. It's not scientifically valid, survey. It's really a collection of opinions and preferences, but we'd like it to be as accurate as possible.
Brent, will you type your email into the chat group for everyone?
Sure.
And then I have it as well if you guys miss it. For Jenny, the survey was included in the email I sent out to through CQL programs with the Zoom link. It's also posted on at the City of Bisbee, I believe, webpage, and I think we have it on the Copper Queen Library Facebook page in the posts, and we can put it on the webpage as well again for the 2 weeks. And I just want to thank, there we go. So it's brent.crowther@kimley-horn.com. And I just want to thank all of you for being here, participating, being involved. and this is about our community. This is about how our community moves and our bodies move through space in the physicality of our geographically very spread out city of Bisbee with our boroughs and neighborhoods. So the vision is huge, but the feasibility is also huge. And with the American Jobs Plan, with the infrastructure plan, even more funding will be available for projects like this. So please always reach out to your senators and Congress people to let them know that we need this as a community. So thank you, Megan. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Jason. Thank you to all the city staff and elected officials who were here, and to all of you who worked on this plan and simply showed up tonight to participate. Your voice is important, and we hope to see you again soon. Have a
Thank you
great
very
night.
much.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Take care. Be safe.